Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about rendering. And so I started with this warm-up rough sketch, and you see it's pretty scratchy, pretty crazy, but I want to show you how I would take something like this and render. And I think the rendering really starts right from what you decide to illustrate, and then the line weight itself. The line weight will kind of obviously tie in with the rendering, so I figured we should start here. So I've already soft erased this back and probably take it a little bit further, actually, about right there. And what I want to do here is make a copy and start to draw over this and render it. So at first what I do is pick a line weight, a style of line weight. So when I go through and I do something like this, I'm going to use like thick to thin lines as I go around it. In this case, I want something that's going to be a bit more of a rough style. I feel like it'll go with this kind of creepy, eerie looking person, whoever this is. And so I'm going to use more bumpy lines as I do this. Where on a different style, I might throw the line more and go for more cleanliness to the way I construct the line. And here I'm going to go for a lot of the little imperfections. So a lot of little bumps. And we just randomly throw a bump in there. It's not that it's something that I see on anatomy when I do study anatomy. It's just, again, I might just do it for a stylistic choice. Now for the bridge of the nose here, I might put a bump here, and then I might throw the line down like this. So the reason is I'm trying to add, I don't want it to all be these wavy lines, these bumpy lines everywhere. I want a little bit of comparative work or contrast, I guess, contrasting elements. Because if not, it might just look like I have a shaky hand or something. I don't know. So I just think it looks cool to go back and forth. So something like that. And again, the bridge of the nose kind of angled here, and then I might just throw that line there. So that's more of a stylistic choice in that area. And with the hair, I'm picturing very scratchy, scribbly, have it falling over itself and, waving. I want it to be wavy, but I don't want it to look pretty. Like a lot of times when you do waves and curls, you do what's called beauty lines, and those are those little flips at the end. That'll generally make something look more refined or pretty, or I think that's why they're called beauty lines, but you'll use it for beautiful hair, obviously. But for this character, I want to mix in some not so beautiful hair, some scraggly ones that are just kind of sticking up and pointed, so that it doesn't look like pretty hair. I want it to look more like matted hair, or just like this person hasn't bathed in a while. So I need to be careful of doing these flowing, swirly lines. Think of it like this: if you're drawing the Hulk, for instance, you want his hair to look like it has movement and wave to it, but you don't want it to look pretty, right? You wouldn't give him a nice slicked over hairdo. You wouldn't give him Superman's curl or something. So you got to just kind of think about little decisions like that, I think. And I'm not the best one to really teach you that, because I forget to do that a lot of times in my work. But since I'm explaining it, it's coming to mind, and I'll pretend like I always do that, which I guess I'm teaching myself at the same time here. So I think you'll see a little bit of the other side of the ear here. So I'm feeling myself start to clean up the lines a little too much. I got to remember that I do want that bumpiness, that eeriness into the character. So I got to throw in some more imperfections. But again, just kind of play around with messing up the lines as you go. Less symmetry, in a character like this, I think. So I want something that looks, he doesn't look so perfect, doesn't look so pretty, prettified, if that's even a word, prettified. So, making sure to create asymmetry along with the bumpiness. It's kind of fun, too, to just try to scribble in a certain area. So, an area that you kind of think what's going on there with the anatomy, but then you want to mix up some imaginative pieces in there into that puzzle. So you purposely kind of scribble in that area and then try to find things in the scribble. I think that's That's always a fun way to explore ideas. And it's not always easy because I think we spend most of our time trying to draw things that look correct, that look like they may really look in life. But then for this type of stuff, we have to only do bits and pieces of that. That's probably the hardest part. You want it to look like an eye, but then, we're not going for photorealism here. We're not going for an exact replication of an eye, but a stylized interpretation of it. So we have to again, let loose and let go of that control that we think we have when we're illustrating, if there's any control at all. But we tend to tense up. I just remember an artist, Tim Vigil, told me one time, and I was really amateurish back then, and I was showing him my work, and he was nice enough to stop what he was doing and look at it, and he was like, "Looks like you're tensing up on the work. Try holding the pencil to the back of the pencil." I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's like he's like, "Hold it to the very back." So if you got your pencil, just in case you don't understand what I'm saying here, here's your pencil or stylus. Try holding it with your hand back here. This is a hand, folks. I'm not going to get into that too much. And so you're letting go of that control and forcing yourself to, be loose and gestural with the way that you're creating the lines. And so you got to remember that, especially in a piece like this where it just kind of makes more sense. This character's kind of odd anyways, so we want to scribble and let go of that control. I just think it looks more creative, looks more fun. And you can do that all over. I mean, it definitely holds true in certain things like texturizing and scraggly hair, and but you could let that go through the entire piece into the rendering. We'll get to the rendering here in a second, but like I said, I feel this is part of that rendering. You have to have an idea going in. And that's what you see me doing here, just kind of scribbling and getting these ideas into place. And then now I can start to render over this. I'm not sure of the mouth expression here. So you see I'm purposely breaking up the lines, keeping it very scratchy, scribbly. Maybe he's got one side of his mouth down a little bit. Again, that asymmetrical kind of look I think is more interesting. I can develop plane changes as I go here as well. I'm thinking for the chin, again, kind of scratchy hair? No. Scribbly hair? Maybe. Something like that. Just kind of throw those lines in there, mix them up. Maybe one spot that's a little bit longer, who knows. And then some stubble that comes off of there. That might be fun. Overly skinny neck. Okay, so I know you guys are waiting for the rendering, so let me jump in and do that. Now another thing that I do digitally, and I don't think I've done it a whole lot traditionally, but I imagine you could with like a gray Prismacolor marker, is I'll throw in a layer like this. I'll grab the G pen and I will block in a little bit of shadow. So let's say the shadow under the nose, and I'll tone back the opacity like this. And I'll keep the light source pretty basic. I want there to be some shadow that we can render from under the eyes. Something like this. The ears, get in some more shadow there. Under the cheekbone, he's got these really kind of overly pronounced cheekbones because he's not eating all his vitamins. I don't know. Poor diet. More shading in the eye. So I just use this G-pen method, block in some shadow. I don't know why. I find it to be easier than if I try to just draw in my shadows. They always come out better if I do it this way. So give it a try, see if you like it. Shadow under the neck, under the jaw, sorry. Yikes. Oh yeah, something like that. Just, it's not going to be overly shaded. But this is a great way. I think this is really good for when you go to light faces. You know, I always pull reference for lighting a face. And then obviously I have to change it because this face doesn't look like any face you're going to see. But I might do something like this. You get the plane changes. So, the, you know, upper lip, you're going to get a shadow on the bottom of that. You're going to see more of the top plane of the bottom lip is going to be in lit in light. That doesn't sound right. So something like that. Kind of like that. Kind of looks a little bit more eerie, doesn't it? Having that one side shaded. So let's go with that. I might even throw a little hints of shadow in the hair because I'm going to render that a certain way. So yeah. So there we go. So there's our... What do we have a little bit on the cheek right there? I always get confused by this area right there. I'll just leave it there for now, but I don't know if I like that. Okay, so we'll say that this is what we're going for. Okay. All this shading here, there. And then, again, you can play with the opacity there. You can blue line it if you're using this particular software. Remember, if you want to blue line it and you're not using this, you add a layer, set that layer blending mode to screen. And you can color any color you want. It doesn't have to be blue. This just does it all for you under the layer property, which I think is very helpful. Okay, so now to some rendering. So with this, typically with rendering, I'm just going to try to, you know, crosshatch it or bring it out a bit more. So I'll draw through this and I'll sculpt this shadow. So that shadow I threw in with the G pen isn't really per se the exact way I would leave that shadow. I use it as an idea and I sculpt into the other forms and I just kind of I combine it all like this. So I'm going to mess it up a bit. I'm going to throw in some little bumps here and there. Just kind of, again, kind of sculpt it and bring it together. I really just think of it as a way to introduce that idea, but it's not the end all. It's not like I just throw it in like that and leave it, I guess. So again, just kind of connecting all this together. I think for the most part it looks pretty accurate though for what I'm after. So you see I'm staying pretty true to it. With something like this, I might change the shape altogether. I kind of like this little piece right here. So I bring that down and then I might add to that. Add some more pieces off to the side here. But yeah, I guess I am for the most part staying pretty true to this. I can also stylize the edges of this so I can, you know, make some sharper little angles in there as well. Doesn't all have to be little blobs. It can be little sharp areas to contrast it a bit. I think the sharper shadows make it look a little bit more kind of rigid, obviously, so it kind of adds a different vibe to it since a lot of this is, I would say, more organic feeling at this point. So again, just kind of bring that all together. I don't know what I had going on here because I think the earpiece would go like this. I probably just throw all that in shadow. Okay, so now for rendering, I'm going to just bring this out a little bit more, and I'm just going to throw in some little tapered lines. Or let me do this. I'm going to put this on a different layer because this part I want to explain that although when I do this part, I'm really just trying to round over the gradation. Or, you know, I'm trying to create a gradient from dark to light. So I'm going to use thick to thin lines, and I'm going to round the lines, curve the lines around the form. But there are so many different ways to interpret what you want to see here, and it's so subjective, you just have to play around with it. One of the major things I see in my own work, looking back at it, is in the beginning I never brought the lines tight enough together. Now keep in mind, you can bring those tighter together even with the cross-hatching. You know, that's kind of what the cross-hatching is doing for you. It's giving a reinforced kind of effect of the gradient. But they don't have to be so clean. I like to sometimes, you know, see how clean I can make these, and that's probably not always the best thing. especially if it slows you down. But also, you just really want to think independently of you know, being so specific, like creating it in one way like that. I think that hinders you. You want to think about, you know, any number of ways and different styles that you can create. I don't like that. Let me try that again. So yeah, I think that looking at it like you have to render the same way every time is kind of counterproductive. And I really just kind of play around with it. You know, I might throw some lines in like this. I might go back and thicken some of them up. I really like the tapered line effect. It's not necessarily something you have to do, but I think that it helps to really round over the forms. Again, that's what I'm after. Another way is to make the lines tighter in succession, and then as they come up to the area that's receiving more light, you can just start to space them apart. Even if they're tapered, it's still going to, you know, give you that gradation. And then obviously if you combine your rendering the other way, remember your rendering can be 45 degrees, it can be 90 degrees, it doesn't matter. It's the main thing is that you're just kind of looking at the overall effect it has on the art. So if you pull back and that gives you the gradation that you're looking for, the shading that you're looking for, then I think it works. And sometimes it's just a matter of texture. It's not even that you're trying to, you know, I think most of the times you are trying to show that that change in value and tone, but sometimes you just want something to look, you know, like a cool texture. So again, you see that I'm using a different spacing here. It just provides a little bit different look than it does to the bottom. It's not so entirely different where I think it sticks out like a sore thumb. But you see I did try to change that up a little bit. And you see for the most part, I start off by pointing with the shape that I'm trying to explain. But I'll do a variation here in a second so I can show you that it doesn't need to be this way. This is just the style that, you know, my particular cup of tea at the moment. But I changed my mind like the weather. You know, come visit me in 6 months, my art will look totally different probably. Unless, of course, you're an editor watching this video, in which case, strike that last comment. I'll draw consistently for the rest of my life. I am a machine. I wish. Okay, so now I can even curve these lines like this. So you see these are all a little bit different. I can go back and thicken the ones that are closer to the shadow. Yeah, I think that's working. You can also, it doesn't all have to be so consistent around the shadow either. So it doesn't have to be, for instance, I can go around this cheek area like this. This is kind of what I've been doing, you know, consistently going around the entire edge. And, you know, doing the cross-hatching the other way. Or, I think that's too much anyways. Let's try shading the bottom like this. Also using smaller lines because I felt like the ones I just did were way too vivid. And then let's shade this part right here, just real thin lines up this way. So look how it provides a very different look. Relative to the same idea, you know, it's pretty much the same concept, but I think that looks better. Also, you don't have to cross-hatch everything. You can just use some different line variation like this. These little tiny little spikes like that. I think that looks cool for that area. And what else? Also, oh yeah, let me show you this for under the eye here, or under the brow, I should say. So I'm going to taper these lines. Continuation of what I've been doing, right? But again, I really try to fight the urge to make everything look the same all throughout. I just feel like even if it's cool looking, too much of the same thing is boring. It's like pizza, right? If you ate pizza every single day for the rest of your life, at some point you'd hate pizza. I know it sounds impossible, but it would happen. But yeah, so like there, that's a little different, but then I can also come back with clear. I use the G pen for this because it erases in a solid way. And I can just erase back some of those lines. I can do that here as well. So it's something else I think that gives that little bit of variation to this otherwise overly repetitive cross-hatching. So me personally, again, I just like to have little bits of variation in there. I just think it looks more interesting. Okay, so the other thing I want to show you real quick is that it doesn't have to be so clean like I was doing it. Okay, so again, for me, what I'm really trying to do is convey the idea of cross-hatching, gradation, rounding of the forms. But, you know, take a look at all these different artists around you, pick up cues from their work. You know, you see everything under the sun, right? People that do it with all dots and stippling and shading of, you know, dry brush effects. There's all sorts of neat stuff out there. So you just have to experiment. You got to remember that experimentation is the key to invention, or whatever that phrase is. So just try a number of things. Try not tapering the lines. Try cross-hatching in a multiple ways. Find your style. You know, try different things in different days of the week. I don't know. Just play around with it. But you see here, I'm using some thinner lines, a lot more of them, I guess. I still want to get some kind of gradation going here, but I'm not worrying about the tapered lines that I was making before. We'll see if I can still get this to look good. Now, chances are the other one's going to look better for me because that's what I'm used to doing, so therefore I've got more practice at it. But I still try to mix things up a bit. You know, whenever you get into a rut, kills creativity, I think. So I try to experiment whenever possible. Sometimes it can be just trying a different brush, but a lot of times it's technique more than the tools, I think. Yeah, I don't particularly like this, but let's see what it looks like from a distance. Yeah, I mean, it still gives the gradation. Did I keep the other one? Yeah, I still like that better, and that's predominantly why that's my style. Let's try it a different way, because I'm not digging that. Let's try... What else could we do here? Or you know what, better yet, instead of me trying to go... So, just so you know my thought process, I've been trying to curve with the forms, right? And keep some kind of consistency. Whether or not I use thick lines, thin lines, tapered lines, that's kind of been the thought process. So now what I'm going to do is just really get messy with it. Okay, so I'm not going to try to stay to the edge of the dark to light, so the transition area. So let me show you what I mean here. I'm just going to throw in these lines, and I'm just going to go, I'm still going to cross hatch, but I'm just going to go like right through it. So I may hit some of the transition area, but then feel free to go right through the middle. Let's see if that does anything interesting there. I'll try to be extremely messy with it. It's kind of hard too, like changing up my style. It's like I'm just stuck in that rut, you know, so I got to break out of it. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but I'm trying, folks. Just for you. But it does make sense that I would have adopted my view of doing this from repetition, and that it would be hard to get out of that because I've spent a lot of time trying to get good at it. Okay, so something like that. I think that another thing is like these little bumps that you'll see a lot of people do, myself included. You can put these little bumps on the edge of darn near anything, and it immediately looks cooler, like immediately. Yeah, it's starting to look better. It's just, I think you just kind of have to build up on this. Okay, let's check it from a distance. Oh, and you know what we could do? We could combine that one with the other one. There we go. Now it's looking cool. So there's mine, my overly clean, concise, what I think is concise. Maybe you're looking at that. Sounds so concise to me. But then, you know, put the other one on top. That actually looks pretty cool. And then we could take the blue line, convert that back to a grayscale, darken it up, and we get a little bit more of an inked version. But obviously I would go back through and clean that up as well. So yeah, so that's it, folks. That's how I basically think of rendering. And then you just have to experiment, be crazy with it. Again, me personally, I go more for this type of style. That's the one that you see me finish and show off to the world and say, look, I drew something. What do you think? And then as far as hair, because I feel like I feel like I was going to explain that and I didn't. Hair, I would just really think about the light source, get a, for the scraggly version, I would kind of erase back through the middle. And then as I draw through this, I would just keep bringing out that light source. Let me just try to explain it real quick. So I would get some of this light source going like this. But again, I don't want this to be too wavy. I don't mind a couple waves because I feel like it helps to make this look like it's moving. You want that feeling of movement in your work. But then also I would throw these oddball hairs, these stray ones that just kind of fall over to the front, and little messy ones, wiry ones, stuff like that. But I want to think about that light source as I keep doing this. Remember, you can even take, again, the white out and go through there, and you can get some of these little scraggly ones with the white out as well. Yeah, and that's really it. I mean, I would just keep developing it, but that's the general idea that I use for hair, is develop the light source, then work around it, so on and so forth. So that'll bring this one to a close. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I would love to know what you think, so make sure to comment in the section below. Also, let me know what you want to see in the future. I'll make sure to get that on the channel very soon. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.